The Secret of Blackwood Manor. Chapter 1. A Mysterious Invitation. Detective William Carter was sitting at his desk, surrounded by stacks of papers, when an unexpected letter arrived. It was sealed with an old-fashioned wax stamp. The letter simply read, "Dear Detective Carter, I need your help with a matter of great importance. Please come to Blackwood Manor at once. Enclosed is a train ticket for your journey. Yours sincerely, Henry Blackwood." William had never heard of Henry Blackwood or Blackwood Manor. He held the letter up to the light, curious about the urgency of the message. It had been a slow week, so the idea of a mysterious case intrigued him. 2 days later, William found himself aboard a train headed to the countryside, far from the busy streets of London. The landscape outside was beautiful yet eerily quiet, and as the train approached Blackwood, the sky grew dark, filled with heavy clouds. "Perfect weather for a mystery," he muttered to himself. Chapter 2. The Arrival at Blackwood Manor. When William arrived at Blackwood Manor, the sight before him took his breath away. The mansion stood tall and grand, but its stone walls looked worn and aged, covered in ivy. The windows were dark, and only a dim light flickered in the hallway. An old man with a slightly hunched back opened the door. "You must be Detective Carter," he said, his voice as cold as the air outside. "I'm Thomas, the butler. Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you." William followed the butler through a series of dimly lit corridors. The paintings on the walls seemed to watch him as he passed. Finally, they entered a grand study, where an older gentleman with a stern face sat by the fireplace. "Detective Carter," Henry Blackwood greeted him. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "What seems to be the problem, Mr. Blackwood?" William asked, taking a seat. "There's been a death in the family," Henry said slowly. "My brother, Edward, died under mysterious circumstances 2 weeks ago. The police ruled it an accident, but I believe otherwise." "Why do you think it wasn't an accident?" William asked, his curiosity piqued. "Because," Henry said, lowering his voice, "Edward told me someone was trying to kill him." Chapter 3. The Suspects. William spent the next few hours listening to Henry Blackwood talk about his family and the events leading up to his brother's death. Edward Blackwood had been a wealthy man, just like his brother, but he had a darker side. According to Henry, Edward had many enemies, both inside and outside the family. "I'll introduce you to the rest of the family," Henry said. "They've been staying here since the funeral." William met 3 key individuals: Helena Blackwood, Edward's widow; Victor Blackwood, their son; and Emily, a young woman who had been Edward's secretary for many years. Each of them had a different reaction when William asked about Edward's death. Helena, with her cold demeanor and sharp eyes, seemed indifferent. "Edward had many secrets," she said cryptically. Victor was nervous, avoiding eye contact. "My father was a difficult man. It was probably just an accident," he muttered. Emily was more emotional, tears in her eyes as she spoke. "I don't believe Mr. Blackwood would have hurt himself. He had plans, things he wanted to accomplish." After meeting the family, William's mind raced with questions. Each of them seemed to have something to hide. Chapter 4. The Discovery. The next morning, William decided to investigate the place where Edward Blackwood had died. It was the library, a massive room filled with old books, dusty shelves, and a grand chandelier that hung from the ceiling. According to the police report, Edward had fallen from a ladder while reaching for a book on the top shelf. The fall was fatal, but as William looked around, something didn't feel right. He examined the ladder carefully. It was sturdy, not the kind that would easily tip over. Then something caught his eye. There was a scratch on the wooden floor near the base of the ladder. What caused this? William muttered. He crouched down and noticed that the scratch led towards a bookshelf. With a little effort, he pulled the bookshelf aside and discovered a hidden passage. Interesting, William whispered to himself as he stepped inside. Chapter 5. The Hidden Room. The passage led to a small room, dimly lit by a single window covered with dust. In the center of the room was a desk covered in papers, old letters, and what appeared to be blueprints. William carefully examined the papers. They seemed to be related to business deals, but one name stood out: Marcus Gray. Who is Marcus Gray? William wondered aloud. The name hadn't come up in his conversations with the family. But clearly, Edward had been involved in something secret, something he didn't want the rest of the family to know about. As he continued searching, William found a small, locked drawer in the desk. He tried to open it but couldn't. He would need to find the key. Just as he turned to leave the room, he heard footsteps behind him. He quickly moved back into the shadows. Someone had entered the library. Chapter 6. An Unexpected Visitor. William peered through the crack in the hidden door and saw Victor Blackwood standing in the library, looking nervous. Victor walked over to the bookshelf, as if he knew about the hidden passage, but then he stopped. Why was Victor here? William thought. Was he looking for the hidden room, or did he know something about it? That evening, William confronted Victor. I saw you in the library earlier today. What were you looking for? Victor hesitated, then said, I was just thinking about my father. I didn't find anything. Are you sure? William pressed. Victor's face turned pale. I don't know what you mean. William left him with a warning. If you're hiding something, I'll find out. Chapter 7. The Key to the Mystery. The next day, while exploring the manor, William stumbled upon a small, forgotten room in the attic. Among the old furniture and dusty portraits, he found a chest. Inside was a collection of old keys, and one of them seemed like it could fit the drawer in the hidden room. Returning to the hidden room, William used the key to unlock the drawer. Inside, he found something unexpected: a photograph of Edward Blackwood with a man who could only be Marcus Gray. Attached to the photo was a note. Deal must be done by the end of the month. No delays. Marcus Gray must be the key to all of this, William realized. But who was he, and why hadn't anyone mentioned him? Chapter 8. The Final Confrontation. William decided to confront Henry Blackwood about Marcus Gray. Who is he? William demanded, showing him the photograph. Henry looked shocked. Then his face hardened. Marcus Gray is a businessman, a dangerous one. Edward was in deep trouble with him, but I didn't think it had anything to do with his death. But it does, William said firmly. Edward didn't die by accident. Someone killed him, and I believe it was because of his dealings with Marcus Gray. Just as William finished speaking, the door burst open. It was Helena holding a letter in her hand. I found this in Edward's study, she said. It's from Marcus Gray, threatening to ruin our family if Edward didn't pay him what he owed. Everything became clear to William. Edward didn't fall from the ladder. He was murdered, probably pushed during a confrontation about the money he owed Marcus Gray. The family looked at each other in shock. But who had done it? William turned to Henry, the one who had called him here in the first place. You knew about this all along, didn't you? William said slowly. You knew someone in the family might have been involved. Henry looked away, his guilt clear. I didn't want to believe it, he whispered. But I had to know the truth. In the end, it was Victor who confessed. He had overheard his father's conversation with Marcus Gray and, in a moment of rage, confronted him in the library. Things had escalated, and Victor had pushed his father off the ladder. As Victor was led away by the police, William left Blackwood Manor, knowing the case had come to a tragic end. But one thing was certain: Edward Blackwood's secrets had finally been uncovered, and justice had been served.